All right, we are officially live on YouTube and LinkedIn, I think. Hopefully I did that accurately. So welcome everybody to our April Town Hall. We'll give it just maybe 1 or 2 minutes for folks to kind of file in, and then we will get going. For folks who are already here, curious to hear where everybody's from. I'm dialing in from Chicago. We have some folks that are presenting today that are based out of Europe. So yeah, in chat, just let us know where you're from and say hi. Tomasz, I got to get back to Budapest with you, man. That was such a great city. London, Barcelona, my goodness, we are Europe. We are all in Europe today. Bloomington, Illinois, amazing. All right, we're gonna give it just 1 more minute and then we will go ahead and get started. Can't believe it's already town hall time. Time flies. All right, let's go ahead and kick things off. For those of you who have not met, I'm Maggie. I'm the founding community product manager of DataHub. Welcome to our April Town Hall. We have plenty for us to work through today. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off my screen share here. All right, everybody can see my screen. Yes, yes, perfect. So welcome to April. Today we are going to be covering a slew of things related to access control within DataHub. I'll kick things off with just our community announcements, project updates, etc. Then Herschel's going to jump in and show his recent work on bidirectional sync between DataHub and DBT. And then David will give us a kind of high-level overview of data access controls within DataHub, kind of the current state of it all. And then we will hear from our friends over at MediaMarktSaturn, and we'll get a live demo of some customization that they've done to manage data access control within DataHub. So plenty of good stuff to jump into. So at a high level, we are inching closer and closer to 11,000 people on our Slack. I updated this earlier this week, so we're actually probably at 10,900 or so. So we're still seeing folks come in all over the world, all hours of the day. Very active Slack community, very supportive Slack community. We have just around 1,000 weekly active users. And just in the past month, 4,200 messages post. There's always a conversation happening in there. So if you're not in our Slack, feel free to join us and join that conversation. We do always like to take a quick look at our community support volume. So kind of how where questions are coming in, where we could use a little bit of support from the community. So in terms of our weekly GitHub PR activity, we averaged around 50 PRs opened per week over the past 4 weeks, which is slightly higher than the period prior to that. Really all that is to say, there's a tremendous amount of code volume coming in through our project. So, as much as we can, we like to make sure that we're protecting the core team's time to not only review and actually move those through. And so if you are able and if you're willing, we always appreciate folks that can kind of jump in and provide support within our Slack channels. Over the last 4 weeks, we saw about 350 questions coming in per week, generally geared more towards our troubleshoot channel. But so if you are able to jump in and help out, we always appreciate that. Shashanka just put the link to our Slack channel in chat in case you are not in there. Speaking of community support, we always love to give shout outs to folks who are jumping in and helping out. Massive thanks to Sudhakara and Hendrik over the past month, really stepping up there, along with all these wonderful humans. We genuinely could not do all of this without you, so we're very appreciative of you stepping in and helping us out. In terms of events, you may have seen this in Slack, you may have seen this in emails that we've sent out. We are now on a weekly basis. We have a weekly DataHub crash course session. The goal of the session is to get you up and running with DataHub, give you a walkthrough or just a kind of high-level demo of the platform, and then also kind of walk through a quick start. So it's really geared towards newbies, people who are, maybe new to the project and need a little bit of additional context there. So join us every Wednesday, and these will always be available for you to RSVP to or sign up for it at our on our community calendar, which is events.datahubproject.io. Speaking of webinars, we are next Tuesday, we're going to hear from John Joyce from the ACREL team on our latest release on the ACREL side, our ACREL Observe feature. So this will be kind of jumping into everything you need to know about that feature. It's really just starting to bring in observability, really robust observability side by side with your governance, with your search and discovery. So really building out that kind of full picture of the health of your data within your stack. So you can scan that QR code and or I put the link down at the bottom for you to join. Also, we will be sharing out the slides after this, so you don't have to memorize all of these things. And then last but not least, just a reminder that we have a public calendar where you can subscribe to these events and just stay up to date on all things DataHub. All right, I realize I'm talking very fast. We have a lot to get through, so I'm trying to move through all of it. So let's talk through project updates. In April, we merged 160 PRs between both the main DataHub project repo as well as our DataHub Helm repo. This included 23 first-time contributors, which is just outstanding. Like, I am still blown away on a monthly basis how many new people are showing up and contributing to the project. We really genuinely appreciate all of your hard work. And yeah, huge shout out to all of these folks. The other thing, I realize now this is the ugliest slide I've ever put together, but let me tell you, it is my most favorite slide of this entire deck because Hendrik made the possibly mistake of letting me know that there's a website where you can AI generate any song anywhere. So that took me down a very strange rabbit hole of generating a song specific to our latest release. I will humbly say it is an absolute banger. It's been stuck in my head all week, and I have hidden the link to it somewhere in our release notes for version 13.1. So whoever finds that first, and you let me know, I will let you choose the song theme and general vibe of our next release. So if you find that link, tell me where you found it, and also enjoy the song. It's fantastic. I thought about playing it during this, and I thought that would be a little too much, but all right. So speaking of V13 or 013.1, we talked about this at our last town hall. This is officially released. For folks who are, sounds like there might be someone who's unmuted. Please be sure to stay on mute, please. So we talked about this a little bit in our last release. We officially rolled out 013.1 within the last month. On the user experience side of things, we had a very big contribution from the team over at Optum to capture and display common joins between data sets. So big shout out to Raj and the whole team over there. We also had just some basic improvements to our UI, or kind of markdown support, and kind of how you can customize groups within DataHub, and then also some improvements to error visibility and interpretability. Oops. Where did that go? On the ingestion side of things, we are incubating an integration with Dagster. So super excited about that one. We've also expanded out our field classification support to work with Redshift, BigQuery, DynamoDB, and just general SQL sources. So if you are interested in kind of auto-classifying fields based off of the kind of naming conventions and or some of like kind of sampling of the the field values themselves. We now support that natively for Redshift, BigQuery, DynamoDB, and generally SQL sources. We've also rolled out support for Open Lineage in service of our Spark lineage plugin to support column level lineage for Spark. So great progress there. And then kind of moving right along in terms of the kind of developer experience side of things, we have improvements to our to Kafka capability, some optimizations around our Docker builds, and then error handling for duplicate class names and some linting, and then incorporation of an upgrade on OpenSearch. David called this out in chat. There was an issue with Kafka serialization on 0.13.1, so there's a hot fix available for 0.13.2. All right, so quick preview into what's coming in 0.13.3. So we're targeting mid-May for this release. On the user experience side of things, we'll have just some formatting improvements on how we're formatting long property values on data sets, some improvements on navigating your ingestion sources within DataHub. So if you're managing tens or many, kind of like a high volume of ingestion sources, we're making that easier to navigate. We also have a fix in our autocomplete for domains. So now domains will show up in autocomplete in our search experience. The other thing is that we are incorporating the contribution from the Visa team. If you were at a previous town hall, I believe it was 2 months ago, I've lost track of time, but the Visa team shared their contribution of how they're modeling business attributes. So massive shout out to that team for pushing that through. The idea is that you can consistently manage common classifications within a business attribute and apply that out to assets across your DataHub ecosystem. So yeah, massive shout out to that team. This will be included in our next release. On the ingestion side of things, we have a community contribution around great expectation support for publishing metadata for in-memory or pandas assets. I think this is one that was pretty highly requested within the community, so excited to see that get moved through. We also have expanded support for incremental column level lineage with BigQuery. And then on the Redshift side of things, we're filtering out system queries to make your kind of query volume or your query metrics much more meaningful about kind of like the humans that are querying those tables and not necessarily just the system tables themselves. Separately, we are incubating 2 new sources with Sigma and then CockroachDB. I'm almost done, I promise. I know this is a lot. On the developer experience side of things, Asim from the Acral team rolled out an experimental policy debugger. So if you've ever had your end users come with questions about why can't they see XYZ, or how does a set of roles or policies apply to a specific user, Asim built out a debugger experience where you can start to answer those questions of what policy does a user have, what privileges are assigned to them that are available, are those privileges coming from a role or a group or a direct policy, and just kind of navigate that a little bit more effectively. So huge shout out to Asim. I know that's one that he demoed internally, and I was eating up every word of it. It was amazing. On the roadmap side of things, excuse me, this is our Q1 roadmap. We are still working through kind of final touches on our Q2 roadmap. We will publish that as soon as we possibly can. But we made great progress on our commitments for Q1. The one item, so we're actually going to be, Herschel is going to be demoing our sync back or bidirectional sync with DBT today, so we'll get a live view of that there. And I think that's it for me. So Herschel, I'm going to hand it over to you, and we can talk through bidirectional sync. Do you want to share? Do you want me to share?
You can share for now. There will be a demo at the end that I will share for.
Perfect.
Maggie, there was just one more thing I wanted to add. Am I audible?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask David to give us a quick update on the Netflix team's contributions into the project that have been coming in over the last month or so. David, could you quickly recap those?
Yep. So one of the interesting kind of extensions to our OpenAPI endpoints is the ability to support custom aspects. Previously, you could get an OK experience using custom aspects. However, the main contribution is that there's a new OpenAPI version 3 set of endpoints for entities, which fully supports custom aspects. It also supports all aspects and all entities, versus the earlier version, which only had a subset of those entities and aspects. So that will be in the next release as well.
Awesome. That was the only thing I remembered we forgot to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Over to Herschel.
Awesome. So maybe a little background first on why we're thinking about this bidirectional sync. We already have a mechanism for moving DBT metadata into DataHub or into Acrel. And the way it works is in your DBT model, in those YAML files, you can define a meta section or tags or descriptions, and we will pull that information out. If you need to do like minor transformations on them, we have a configuration section, which is the bottom screenshot that shows you how exactly that can do those transformations. And then it shows up in the Acrel interface as ownership or as tags or terms. And this works both at the model level or the snapshot source, whatever you're using, as well as at the column level for all of those things. So that's great. Maybe a quick question, next slide, is why do we want to do this? The overall reason that we care to kind of define these annotations in DBT and then sync them into the catalog, into DataHub, is around what we call the shift left philosophy. It's the idea of making documentation and governance and things like ownership a development time concern. If you're building out a DBT model, you've got information about what things are PII, what things are sensitive, who owns this, who are the stakeholders. And if you do that quick annotation of just writing a couple lines in YAML, that saves a lot of people a lot of time down the line. It's very similar to the philosophy around DevOps, which is shifting the operational pieces to developers. It's the same idea here, shifting governance and documentation and ownership further earlier in the development process. So the question that we get here is, what happens if I make edits through the UI? Because now some things exist in DBT, some things exist in the catalog, and these two things are not talking to each other in a great way. DBT is pushing updates into the catalog, but any updates in the catalog won't help folks who are purely developing on DBT. There's two solves for this. The first, which is what most people do, is they just let the things get out of sync. And usually it's not a huge issue because you can kind of coach people to make changes in DBT or make these types of changes in DBT and these other types of changes in DataHub. The other option is folks have gone down is making DataHub read-only and then requiring edits to happen via DBT. So DBT is the source of truth, and DataHub just reflects that. Obviously, the issue is a lot of people aren't familiar with DBT or don't want to go into and make all these edits to YAML files just to like add an owner to a given thing. It's like a pretty heavyweight process, and it's not super accessible, whereas pointing and clicking in a UI very much is. And so to address this kind of gap, we thought, let's just sync the two. So DBT can already push updates into the catalog. Let's complete the loop here and push updates from the catalog back into DBT. And so that way these things will never get out of sync. And so what does that look like? Well, if you go into the UI and you add an owner, it will automatically get synced. We will open a PR to your DBT GitHub repo, add the necessary config sections to your YAML files, and then that way, and then obviously we have the ability to ingest these things in. And so this way, the two will always remain in sync. If you remove an owner, we can remove it appropriately, kind of take care of all the details there. So let's, I'll share screen and we can do a quick demo of this. All right. So I had already gone into the UI last night, and as in that screenshot, I added our virtual friend Janet Herbert as an owner to this table. There's this model, and we can see that there's a PR from last night as well that keeps my changes in sync. It tells me what exactly happened, and if I go to the view, I can see that exactly this thing changed. And we can scroll up and see it's the right table. Now, if I then go and let's say add a term and say that this thing actually has PII in it, I'll mark that as done. And then maybe I also want to add a tag that this is like a bronze tier data set. So we can do both of those two things. It'll take around 10 seconds to kind of process the changes in our backend, and then we can hit refresh on this PR. All right, the term came in, and then it's probably cranking through the tag as we speak. There it is. And there we go. There's the tag added to this thing as well. And of course, it works for removals as well. So I can go into the UI. Maybe, actually, Janet was not an owner for this thing. I'm going to remove her. And once again, this thing will get updated, and owners will get set to an empty list. So we can wait for that to happen. There we go. And it will, the way it works is it continually builds on the exact same, on one big PR. It kind of builds up the list of changes here. And then once this is merged, it will just, and after it's merged, if another change happens to a DBT related thing, it will open up a new PR against your repo and start adding commits there. And so there will basically be one evergreen pull request that keeps things up to date and sync. And then if you merge these, they'll get included as DBT ingestion and kind of complete the loop on that. So yeah, that's how that works. As far as availability, this is currently in beta testing with some ACL customers. If you are an ACL customer, please reach out to me if you'd like to be kind of included in that beta. And then due to kind of some of our backend infrastructure requirements, this initially, like for now, will be available only on ACL Cloud. So it won't be part of the open source project just yet. With that, I can pause for any questions.
Awesome. So if there are questions, please take them to chat, and then Herschel, we can just have you keep an eye on chat there. Let's keep things kind of moving along, and David, I'll hand it over to you. Would you like me to share, or are you going to share?
You can go ahead and show the slides.
Cool.
All right. So basically what we're going to do is kind of take a look at the open PRs and open source for the data modeling behind access controls. And so representing that in our product. One of the, we'll start with basically taking a look at the existing implementation that we have that was contributed earlier by PayPal, and kind of a high level overview of exactly how that works. And then we'll take a look at a couple other PRs and kind of like the differences in those designs. And then after this, we'll actually take a look at one of those PRs and like what can be built on top of these data models. One thing I do want to call out is that these PRs, except for the one that's already been merged, are essentially data model PRs, which means that there's no UI components to them yet, which would eventually be built on top of that, are the data model PRs. All right, next slide. All right, so let's take a look at the first kind of what exists in the system today. We can define an external role, and essentially an external role could be something, for example, like an IAM role in AWS that ultimately has the privileges and permissions for you to access data on the system. Within DataHub, what you'll see is a link essentially to request access via an external system. And so this might be useful if you already have an existing external system which is already managing your requests. The external system is responsible for essentially provisioning access to that IAM role. And then it's also responsible for updating the status, the fact that it was provisioned back into DataHub. So this is, again, it's a very lightweight kind of touch, and definitely relies on a lot of external integration with DataHub in order to actually make this work. Next. And so we have a couple of different pieces of the data model that kind of controls this, and it's pretty simple. On a data set, you basically have a list of role associations. So these roles would give you access to that data set in AWS, for example. And part of that role, you get to name the role, add a description, a little bit of information about whether it's a read, admin, write level access request, and then that external URL that you can then is exposed in the UI, so you can go and request access through that external system. And then we also have a list of the actors, the DataHub identities that have been granted access to that role. Go ahead next. So one thing that I definitely recommend is you can go back to the November 2023 town hall, and this screenshot is from that particular town hall, where we actually show what this looks like in the UI. So if you create these roles and establish, write the external request URL, this is what it looks like. You have an access management tab, and you basically have a little button you can click to request access. And then the status and everything else like that. Everything that's updating this, like provisioning and things like that, is handled by the external system. But this is what it would look like, what it does look like in the UI today. All right. So then we have a couple other kind of extensions to this kind of idea of access controls or access requests within DataHub, and how would we model those in a little bit different way. The first PR here is basically one of the nice things is extending it, so not just data sets, but you can also kind of represent access requests to containers or data products, which are essentially end up being collections of data sets, not just individual data sets. The data modeling piece is storing a bunch of this information about, the request status and all this information in a generic map of strings. And just calling back, this particular PR doesn't include the UI components. One of the ways that you might actually automate the provisioning would actually be to use the DataHub Actions framework. So you would respond to changes in this map structure, and then you would execute those provisioning steps within your data platform. In other cases, the UI can deep link into data platform systems that support it, and what that means is you can expose URLs in the UI that drops you to the appropriate admin section if you happen to be an admin within the platform, BigQuery, for example, in order to grant that access. So it's essentially linking to the places where you could provision it manually as a user as well. All right, next slide. And so this is relatively similar to the other. We have entities that are supported, like I said, dataset, container, data products, and then we have a list of access requests, and we basically just have a map string of string. The content of this is largely undefined in the model, and it would depend on higher layers of code in order to interpret the data that's stored in the additional metadata map. All right, next. So we have another PR that was proposed, which is taking a little bit more defined approach. So defined in the sense that it goes to a lot of detail about exactly what the schema looks like for supporting access requests. There are different states, but one of the major changes here is that the access request is a entity. So that means it is kind of like its own individual concept. And then one of the benefits of being able to model as an entity is we can use it for searching and filtering those access requests. This particular data model also goes into detailing fine-grained access controls, and then also, kind of inherent support for multiple data platforms. And again, the actions framework could be used to actually do the provisioning. It's not part of this PR. Next. All right. So we have a top, in this particular design, we have a top level entity called data access. That data access is actually has a composite key of a identity or principal within the data platform and the particular data set. And so you basically have a mapping in this particular entity between a DataHub user and one or more identities on the actual data platform itself. So this has information about, I'm user David, but I might be user David L in BigQuery, or some other ID. So this supports kind of keeping track of both things. Some of the detail that it goes into is kind of like defining the status information about this particular access request, pending, revoked, expired, various failure states, and being able to expose all of this information in the UI potentially. And it also supports things like time-limited requests, like I would like to grant access or request access for this particular data set for a month or a day or something like that. And one thing you'll note there, I didn't call it out on the slide, but the data access properties does include things like field level or fine-grained access in here as well. All right, next. So both of these PRs are really kind of focused on the data model. And so what could we do with this data model in the future? So none of this is in the current PRs. This is like, what is this information useful if it does exist in DataHub? One of the things that we'd ideally have is 100% read fidelity, meaning that you'd be able to look at the actual policies in the native format. If you're dealing with a lot of different data platforms, one of the challenges with dealing with different data platforms is that the way you define policies and what controls you can create vary widely. So it's more so that DataHub would not necessarily be the source of truth, just because supporting every single different variation is going to be a lot of work. But at least you could actually look at the native policy if needed. If we do have some of this information, say like, I don't want to say lowest common denominator, but at least some of that information kind of in a more structured format, we can definitely use it to do things like auditing access controls across lineage. You might have a particular protected column, for example, and you actually want to know who has access to that particular column across any data set, regardless of where it is in a complex lineage. So, BigQuery, or like in the various different places where that column exists, right? Kind of understanding, where all the data platform, where does this column exist, and who has access to that location in each of those places. Another interesting concept that we could potentially use if we had, access request information is view access controls. You might have a dynamic policy that basically says, based on the access controls in the data platform, that could determine your access within DataHub. So if you don't have access to a particular data set on the data platform, we could deny you access to look at that entity's page. We could also create search views, so predefined views that are based on showing you data sets that you have access to individually, or perhaps your group or your team, and kind of get that curated view of what you do have access to. And one of the things that we could do as well is kind of allow you to switch back and forth in and out of that view in case you still need to discover, additional data sets that you don't yet have access to and be able to request it as well. And then the final piece there is going to be the provisioning framework. So a lot of the provisioning is in these current PRs is handled by external systems. So that means you're deep linking into BigQuery, for example, to provide that access controls, or you have an external system. And so having a framework to kind of handle that provisioning for you, maybe a couple examples or something like that. The only thing to kind of recognize there is that, like, if you define a policy in DataHub, it's never going to be 100% representative of what you can do in that platform, and that non-uniformity across data platform access control policies is going to be a constant challenge. And so it's going to pretty much always require some sort of customization. But certainly there are certain a baseline that could be implemented with a common framework. And that's it for my slides. I think we can get on to the more interesting demo.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, David. And so for folks, if you have any questions for David, feel free to throw those in chat and we'll keep an eye on it there. And speaking of access requests, we are joined by our friends over at MediaMarktSaturn, and they're going to walk us through when they gave me a demo of this, my mind was blown. Like I was just so blown away by kind of the surface area and kind of the intricacy of what they've built out in terms of kind of requesting and managing access to data sets. So Dieter, I will hand it over to you and you and the team can take it away.
Thank you, Maggie. Let me try to share my screen first. Perfect. Can you see my screen, just to confirm?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. So first of all, we are really excited to, let's say, be part of this town hall and to have, let's say, the opportunity to show what we have developed, let's say, at MediaMarktSaturn when it comes to, let's say, access management. First of all, who are we, or let's say, who are we representing? So today I have, let's say, the pleasure to represent MediaMarktSaturn. So MediaMarktSaturn, if you're from Europe, or let's say specifically from Germany, you will definitely know us. But let's say outside of, let's say, Europe, to give you some quick facts. So MediaMarktSaturn is Europe's consumer electronics retailer #1, meaning we are, let's say, the biggest and also obviously the best one. So we are operating in 13 different countries and having there roughly 1,000 stores. 50,000 employees make sure that our customers have the best, let's say, experience when buying consumer electronics. We are generating roughly 22 billion euros of sales, and we are also, let's say, an omni-channel retailer, meaning we have, let's say, also a big online shop which generates over 5 billion euros of sales. Now, let me also introduce ourselves. We have Sebastian, we have Pasha, we have Shelley, we have Hugo, who are, let's say, working mostly, let's say, on the backend side, let's say on DataHub, but also, let's say, different services which we develop for MediaMarktSaturn. Then we have Diego and Ahmad, who are, let's say, more on the front end side, but are also, let's say, great designers. Thorsten is our data scientist, who is, for example, doing, let's say, classification topics, for example, identifying, let's say, building algorithms to, let's say, identify PI information, or let's say, utilizing LLMs to give additional, let's say, context to our metadata. Now, let's say some key facts about how we are doing analytics, let's say, in our analytics platform at MediaMarktSaturn. So first of all, we're in a transitioning phase. So we have, let's say, used the concept of data mesh to really scale up our infrastructure, or let's say, data platform. We have, let's say, roughly 8 petabyte of data. Roughly 31 domains, including countries, are utilizing our platform and generating about 8 million queries on average per month. But let's say to tackle governance challenges, but also interoperability between different domains, we are, let's say, now transitioning to a hub and spoke approach. On the tooling side, we are utilizing Google Cloud and mainly BigQuery, where we are doing, let's say, batch processing, but also, let's say, a lot of real-time processing of data. On the BI tool side, there is, let's say, a lot, but we are also there, let's say, partnering mainly with Google, but we also have, let's say, other applications like Power BI or Tableau or Click in our, let's say, tooling landscape. Now, the question, why DataHub, why open source? So first of all, it aligns really good with our vision statement. So what we wanted to offer to our, let's say, stakeholders, our customers within the data area is really, let's say, flexibility and the ability to customize, let's say, solutions for them. This is, let's say, a big topic. Then obviously it's open source, it's come with less costs, and the good thing also no license management, meaning we have, let's say, more time to focus on the cool things and also not having, let's say, a vendor login. But why specifically DataHub? So first of all, it has a great community. We love it. We were really, let's say, looking into, let's say, when we decided for DataHub, how active the community is, let's say, how evolving it is, and how it follows basically industry trends and best practices. So we love it. Great community. Really glad also to, let's say, be part of it. But we also, let's say, basically looked into things, okay, what is maybe DataHub lacking? So where do we need, let's say, to customize? And one of the things is access management. So why do we have, let's say, an own access management solution? First of all, we believe the customer journey, let's say, from really, let's say, exploring, understanding, and then finally getting access to data should have, let's say, one entry point. And the next thing is basically also we want to enable our business data owners to make actionable decisions, meaning, let's say, the least effort as possible, meaning by basically clicking on one button, the access should be granted. The next thing is really, let's say, granular and compliant access control, meaning we want to give our data owners, depending on the, let's say, complexity or let's say the sensitivity of data, also, let's say, all the tooling that they need to really steer the data, let's say, the data access management. With that being said, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Shalay, to basically introduce the next steps with you. Shalay, please go ahead.
Thanks, Dieter. Could you keep the sharing for probably 1 minute more?
Ah, I'm sorry, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, thanks, because I can just continue with those key points, which would be really nice. Yeah, so hello everyone, here's Shalay. Super excited to be here today together with my team and also with the lovely Acro data team. So we have this chance to demonstrate our design and implementation of our access management feature. So yes, as Dieter already mentioned, this is designed for our organizational usage, but across all these design phases, we try to keep everything as general as possible. And we also add up a bunch of highlights based on our core design. For example, we basically focus on lifecycle status management, which means all the data access records will be kept in the DataHub system. They have their own statuses. So here I also would like to thank David for showing the third PR, which I proposed to the community, which is basically the core code of our feature. And yes, and all these implementation are around that core code. Of course, people generally understand access management in a very simple way. Who manages this data set, and someone wants to access the data, and the owner who is responsible for managing the access will give him the access. So this, as it sounds very simple, but we also provide advanced mechanism. For example, for the fine-grained access control, and we also have a component like a global data access dashboard, where the data owners can use that to have a very good overview about all these data access ever created in the system. And also, as I mentioned, this design of the feature is pretty general and it's open for flexible integration. For example, as David also mentioned, there's big possibilities to use the DataHub action framework to implement different action processes to capture the events status changes of the data access records and initiate processes to do, for example, notification, to do provisioning of the permissions in the platform, so on and so forth. So with that being said, I would like to already start showing how it looks like from the data owner perspective. So please, Dieter, let me continue. Thank you. All right. I hope you can now see my DataHub screen.
We sure can.
Lovely. So great. So here is a typical view of the dataset page, which basically every one of us has been already familiar with. So from this moment, I assume myself to be a data owner, which means I'm adding myself with particular owner type. Now we see that this button appears, which allows me to create an access configuration on this data set. So as soon as there's a configuration created, this data set will be ready for data consumers within this organization to make requests to get accesses. Of course, this will go through this approval process. But of course, we also implemented even an advanced mechanism for fine-grained access control, and very particularly in our case is the column and row level security. So what does column level security mean? It means that if you have already shared the access of data set to some data consumer, you still want to keep some column content hidden. For example, they probably are PII data or some confidential data from your organization. So for example, here we'll assume these few tables, these few columns are PII, and I want to enable one of them to be column protected. Great. And beyond that, we also have the row level security, which means for different data consumers, you probably don't want to share the whole set of the content of the table. You only want them to access a subset of all the rows. This can be particularly useful if you are in an international organization and your data set contains data from different countries, and data consumers from different countries should be able to only access the data which are generated for their country. I think this is good for governance in an international organization. And here in this case, we're trying to then add row-level protection for the country name column. Yes, which makes sense as a good example. Great. Then after security is being set, which is optional, you can still keep it simple. And we also have this approval workflow configuration, which says as a data owner, you probably want to manually approve every upcoming request to data, or you can set it automatic. For now, it's simple, but in the future, we will add more rule-based determination and here to automatically decide if a request matches certain condition, it will be automatically approved. But keeping it manual for now, and we also allow this configuration of notification, which means the events, for example, who has created an access request or who has probably changed or updated their existing request, this will generate events, and this event will be transformed into notification, probably via email or Slack message or whatever, and will be sent to a particular type of the owners. The thing is that not probably every owner wants to be bothered with these messages, events. So for example, in this case, I'm a data engineer. I'm responsible for managing this. I can select myself, the type for myself, and not all of them. All right, then this is the summary step. I can review what I did. And after I click done, then yes, the access configuration has been created and this data set is ready to be requested for access. And now I will invite my colleague Diego to demonstrate the user experience from the data consumer side. Diego, please.
Thank you so much, Suley, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be today here and present what we have achieved during the last year. I will demonstrate the process from now on. So let me share my screen. Okay, all right. So now that Suley has configured this object to be requested, I can access requests by clicking this option under the same button. The unique difference is that I'm not the owner of this object, so I can request access for it. The first thing that I need to provide is the principal ID. So I'm gonna use this one already prepared. Okay. Next, I need to provide the purpose of my access so that the owner can make informed decisions. So ideally, I should provide as many information as I can. Okay, right. In the next step, given that the owner has set security for some columns, I need to provide some customization in order to customize my access request. So in the first step, we are gonna see the columns protected under column level protection. And even though it's protected, I can still request access for it by clicking this option. However, for this demo, I'm gonna leave it as it is so we can see how it looks at the end. The next section is the row level area. So in this section, I need to provide the specific values for each row level protected column. I can request access for all of the values by clicking this option, but I can also request access for individual values. So I'm gonna choose Germany as an option, and I'm gonna continue. Okay, all right. In this step, I can confirm my choices. I can go back and modify anything if needed. But for now, I will continue and I'm gonna create my access request. All right, the access request has been created. I can see, I can follow it up by clicking here. And let me introduce the data access management dashboard. I will make a pause here on my access request process and explain a little bit the data access management dashboard. We can see in the left side, the navigation area where I can jump between the other access requests that has been created. As you can see, we have aggregated all of them by status so that I can find them easily. And also in the top area, we can filtering out by managed by me or created by me, meaning that I can be a owner of certain data sets, but I can also be a requester for other ones. So that being said, in the right side, we can find also the detail of the current access request, the selected one. And in this area, well, this is also divided in 3 sections. Let's say in the top area, we can find the title of this object, and also we can find the actions that allow me to change the status of this access request. We are going to see how it works in a few minutes. We can also find here all of the information typed by the owner. And in the left side, sorry, in the right side, we can also find other useful components. So I'm gonna switch my browser to another browser because maybe you are wondering how it looks. Well, sorry. Before of that, I'm gonna make a change over my access request to see how it works. So I'm gonna add just one country. All right. So as you can see, my access request has been updated. Now a new value has come. And also you can see in the activity history that the change has been made. A change has been made by me. Now we are going to see how it looks when it's granted. So for that, I'm going to switch to another browser where I have logged in with my owner account. So I have the same preview, but give me a second. I'm going to copy this access request link. Okay. Now, I am an owner right now in this section. So, oh, sorry, something has happened. Give me a second, please. Probably I'm not the owner of this access request, of this object. Give me, add me. Okay, sorry for that. Can you add me, Soleil, please?
Yes, let me try to add yourself.
Thank you so much.
So it's your customer.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Try again.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm an owner of this object. So the action should change here. Okay, here we have. So now that because I'm the owner, I can reject this request, request changes if it's needed, or grant the access. I'm going to grant the access and see how it goes. So now, as you can see, we are being informed by the via status messages what is happening under the hood. And in the activity history, we can also see what has happened. So the first thing that has happened is that the owner has approved my access request, and 2 seconds ago later, the system has provisioned the access, right? So coming back to my customer session, let's see how it looks at the end. So the customer see the same information, the same history, but now I'm gonna query this object to see the final result. So let's me query. Okay, all right. So since we have left outlet text as a protected column, now we can see that the outlet text column has been hidden by nullifying their values. And also we have selected Switzerland and Germany as a row values. So let me see the country text. Okay, here you have. So we only get records from that contains Switzerland and Germany. And yeah, that's all. Thank you so much. I don't know if you, Maggie, want to take over or there are
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
questions.
Thank you all so much. It looks like there might be some questions or just some conversation happening in chat. Diego, if you want to stop sharing, which I might be able to
Sure,
do that for you.
but I'm not sharing. Right? Oh no, yeah. Sorry.
You still are sharing.
I don't know how to stop it.
Okay,
It
let me
says
see if I
resume
can.
share. Resume share. Pause. Share. No, I cannot stop it. Ah,
Okay,
okay.
I will.
Thank-
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, we got there.
Sorry.
All right, so folks, that gets us to the end of our scheduled agenda. Thank you so much to the team for that. I'm again so blown away by just the surface area and complexity of what you've built out. I think there's just a ton that community can learn from and really benefit from. So thank you so much for taking the time to share that with us. We will stick around for a few minutes if anybody has questions. If anybody has, and also if you want to come off of mute, you can just chime in live. We'll just kind of freeform it. But otherwise, I think we can call it a wrap on our April town hall.
Maggie, you want to play some of that music for us?
I mean,
Let's do it. 3 minutes.
you know I do. I can't explain how much of a rabbit hole.
With the lyrics. With the lyrics.
It's too. Okay, hold on. Let me get there. You put me on the spot over here. Also, Clinton found the link. So Clinton was our winner of.
That was quick.
It was very quick. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know how much of a challenge it really was, but you know. All right. So here's. Oh no! I can't share the audio. I don't have my settings. Sorry. Sorry, folks. Can't do it.
Maggie, send me the link. Maybe I can play it.
Oh man.
So I'll share my. Hear some DataHub music.
I'll
Maggie?
share my for
Yeah.
finding it. Go to the page, open up View Source, and search for the word song. You'll find the link.
No,
Clinton, why don't you
tell the
play it for us
people.
since you found
Don't
it?
tell the people.
Don't tell people. That's the secret. It's been found. It's out. The rabbit is out of the hole.
I know. Shashanka, do you want to do it?
I would play it, guys, but I have to jump. Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thanks
Look
so
forward to
much.
talking to you later. Bye-bye.
Donovan says heavy judgment if it's not a banger. The reality is not everybody will think it's a banger, but I sure do. Am I biased? Yes, I'm too close to it, but that's okay. Your audio's messed up as well. Okay, sorry, folks. Looks like you're just gonna have to go play it somewhere else. I'll put it in chat. All right, everybody, let's call it happy April, happy town hall. Thanks again to the MediaMarktSaturn team. We really appreciate you all. And we'll see you all in Slack. Adios.
Thanks. Bye.
The recording has stopped.